Ace Frehley had been on stages for 50 years. Thousands of concerts. Tens of thousands of fans. Arenas, clubs, festivals, parking lots. He'd seen it all. The screaming. The crying. The marriage proposals shouted over guitar solos. The signs. The gifts thrown on stage. The desperate hands reaching through security barriers. Every variation of human devotion, admiration, obsession. He'd learned to keep playing through all of it. To nod. To acknowledge. To stay professional. To never stop the music. Until that night. The venue was mid-sized. Not a stadium, not a dive bar. Somewhere in between. The kind of place where you could still see individual faces in the crowd if you looked. Ace didn't usually look. He'd learned decades ago that connecting too deeply with the audience could break your focus. You acknowledge the mass, not the individual. You play to the room, not the person. It's safer that way. Cleaner. More professional. But something pulled his attention that night. Maybe it was the stillness. In a sea of movement, bodies jumping, fists pumping, phones recording, there was one person who wasn't moving at all. Front row. Center. A young man, maybe 25, maybe younger. Just standing. Watching. Holding something. Ace's fingers kept playing the riff. Muscle memory. 50 years of muscle memory. But his eyes had locked onto this kid. And the kid was staring back. Not with the usual fan intensity. Not with excitement or eagerness. With something else. Something Ace couldn't immediately identify. Recognition, maybe? Or grief. Or both. The song continued. The band played on. Nobody else had noticed yet. But Ace's attention had split. Half of him was executing the solo he'd played 10,000 times. The other half was trying to understand what this kid was holding. It looked like paper. Or maybe fabric. Something old. Something worn. The kid wasn't waving it. Wasn't trying to get attention. Just holding it. Steady. Patient. Like he knew Ace would eventually see it. And then Ace did see it. Really see it. And his fingers stopped. The silence was instant and shocking. The bass player glanced over, confused. The drummer hesitated for half a beat before continuing. The crowd's energy shifted from joy to confusion in the span of a single stopped note. But Ace wasn't hearing any of it. He was staring at what the kid was holding. And the world had narrowed to just that object, that hand, that face. It was a jacket. A leather jacket. Small. Child-sized. And even from the stage, even in the imperfect lighting, Ace could see the patch on the back. Hand-sewn. Amateur stitching. The letters uneven but deliberate. Space Ace My Hero 1978. Ace set his guitar down. Not roughly. Not dramatically. Just carefully, against the amp, like he was placing something sacred in a sacred spot. The band had stopped now. The entire venue had gone quiet. 3,000 people holding their breath. Nobody understood what was happening. But everyone understood that something was happening. Ace walked to the edge of the stage. The security guard moved to intercept, thinking someone was in danger. Ace waved him off. He crouched down. Eye level with the kid. The kid hadn't moved. Hadn't lowered the jacket. Just kept holding it. Offering it. Waiting. Ace reached out slowly. His hand, callous from decades of strings and picks, touched the leather. It was soft. Worn. Loved. The kind of worn that comes from being a child's most treasured possession. The kind of soft that comes from being held during nightmares, worn to school despite dress codes, clutched during hospital visits. The kid spoke. Quietly. Just loud enough for Ace to hear over the ringing silence. He wore this every day. Even when it didn't fit anymore. Even when kids made fun of him. He said you taught him that being different was okay. That quiet guys could be heroes too. Ace's throat tightened. He didn't ask who. He already knew. Past tense. War. Was. The jacket was too small for this young man. This wasn't his jacket. This was someone else's. Someone who didn't grow up to need a bigger size. He was my little brother. The kid continued. His voice was steady but his hands weren't. The jacket trembled slightly. He passed 3 years ago. Leukemia. He was 12. This jacket, it's the only thing I kept. Mom wanted to donate everything but I couldn't let this go. Because when he wore it, he wasn't sick. He was Space Ace. He was invincible. 3,000 people were watching this conversation they couldn't hear. Phones were recording a moment they didn't understand. But Ace understood. Ace, who'd spent 50 years being told he was just the showman. Just the costume. Just the makeup and the smoke machines. Just the guy who shot rockets from his guitar. Not the poet. Not the technical master. Not the innovator. Just the spectacle. And here was proof that spectacle mattered. That the show, the persona, the character, the Space Ace mythology, had given a dying child a way to feel powerful. Had given a scared kid armor against a world that was taking everything from him. Ace took the jacket. Gently. Like it was made of glass. He stood up, still holding it. Looked at the kid. The kid's eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. He'd done his crying. This wasn't about grief anymore. This was about delivery. About completion. About putting something sacred in the hands of the person it was always meant to reach. Subscribe and leave a comment, because some moments only make sense when we remember them together. Ace turned to face the arena. Held up the jacket. The crowd erupted. Not because they understood. Because Ace had signaled that this mattered. That this was important. That everyone should witness this. He walked back to his guitar. Put the jacket over his amp. Right there. Visible to everyone. A shrine on stage. Then he picked up his guitar. Didn't say anything. Didn't explain. Didn't give a speech. Just started playing. But not the song they'd been in the middle of. Something else. Something slower. Something he hadn't played in years. A deep cut. An album track that never made setlists. But the kid in the front row knew it. Ace could see recognition flash across his face. Could see him mouth the words. It was the brother's favorite song. Nobody in the band questioned it. They followed. Improvised. Matched Ace's energy. And for 6 minutes, that arena became a memorial service. A celebration. A thank you? The kid in the front row closed his eyes. Swayed slightly. And Ace played every note for him. For his brother. For the child in the too small jacket who believed that being different was heroic. When the song ended, Ace did something he never did. He spoke. Into the mic direct. Clear. That jacket stays with me. Tonight. Tomorrow. Every show. You tell your brother I'm honored. You tell him Space Ace doesn't forget his crew. The kid nodded. Just once. Sharp. Definitive. Mission complete. Then he stepped back into the crowd and disappeared. Ace never saw him again. Never asked his name. Didn't need to. Some connections don't require identification. Some debts don't require receipts. The show continued. But the jacket stayed. Draped over the amp. Under the lights. Visible. And Ace played differently. Not better. Not worse. Just differently. Like every note was being witnessed by someone who needed those notes to survive. Someone who'd wrapped himself in mythology because reality was too heavy to carry alone. Backstage, after the show, Ace's tour manager approached carefully. So, the jacket. What's the plan? Ace was sitting alone. Guitar across his lap. Jacket folded neatly beside him. He didn't look up. Just said, "It tours with us. Every show. Front and center. That's not standard procedure. I don't care." And that was the end of the discussion. Because Ace Frehley, who'd spent decades being called the showman, the spectacle, the rocket guitar guy, had just been reminded that shows matter. That spectacle can be sacred. That a costume and a character can save a life even if they can't extend it. The jacket toured for the next 2 years. Different venues. Different crowds. Different countries. Always in the same spot. Over the amp. Under the lights. A small leather shrine to a kid who needed a hero and found one in a man with a guitar and a dream of space. Journalists asked about it. Ace never explained. Just said, "It belongs here." Fans noticed it. Posted theories online. Ace never confirmed any of them. The kid who'd given it to him never reached out again. Didn't need to. The transaction was complete. The delivery was made. The brother's legacy was secured. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Eventually, the jacket was retired. Not because Ace wanted to. Because the leather was deteriorating. Stage lights. Temperature changes. Time. The things that destroy everything eventually. Ace had it preserved. Professional archival work. Museum quality. It sits now in a climate-controlled case. In his home. Not on display. Not public. Just there. A reminder. People still ask Ace about his legacy. About innovation. About technique. About his place in rock history. He usually deflects. Changes the subject. Makes a joke. But if you ask him about the jacket, if you're lucky enough to know to ask about the jacket, his answer is different. "That kid taught me something. We think we're just playing music. Just entertaining. Just putting on a show. But for someone out there, what we do is medicine. It's armor. It's proof that they can survive whatever they're facing. We don't get to know who that someone is most of the time. But that night I knew. And it changed everything." Ace Frehley never needed to prove he was more than spectacle. Never needed to defend his artistry or his contribution or his worth. Because somewhere, a 12-year-old boy in a too small leather jacket had already decided, this man is a hero. And when you've been someone's hero, really, truly been the thing that made their impossible life bearable, you don't need anyone else's validation. The guitar can speak. The show can matter. And sometimes the quietest moment in a 50-year career is the one that screams the loudest truth: we save each other. Artist and audience. Hero and believer. Space Ace and the kid who needed someone to show him that different isn't defective. That night, Ace Frehley stood frozen because something in the universe had aligned. Had brought closure. Had proven that all those years on stage, all those rockets and solos and costumes, hadn't been vanity. They'd been service. And the jacket, small, worn, covered in amateur stitching, was his medal of honor. Years later, someone asked Ace if he'd ever tried to track down the young man. To learn his name. His story. His brother's full history. Ace shook his head. No. That's not what it was about. He needed to give it to me. I needed to receive it. The circle closed. Adding more would just be my ego wanting a better story. The story is already perfect. And it was. 2 years. Always visible. Always honored. But the story didn't end when the leather finally gave out. 3 months after Ace retired the jacket to preservation, a package arrived at his management office. No return address. Just a postmark from somewhere in the Midwest. Inside was a photograph. Black and white. Slightly faded. 2 boys. Maybe 10 and 7 years old. The younger one wearing the jacket. Oversized on his small frame. Grinning. The older one standing behind him, hands on his shoulders. Protective. Proud. On the back, written in careful handwriting. "Thank you for keeping your promise. He knows. I know. That's all that matters." Ace had the photo framed. It sits next to the preserved jacket. 2 artifacts of the same truth. That connection doesn't require conversation. That impact doesn't require intention. That sometimes you save someone's life and don't know it until years later when a stranger hands you proof. The touring musicians who shared stages with Ace during those 2 years remember the jacket. Remember how Ace would glance at it between songs. How he'd adjust it carefully if it shifted during load-in. How he refused to let anyone else touch it. They remember asking about it once. Just once. Ace's answer was simple. It's a reminder that we matter. Not because we're talented. Not because we're famous. Because someone needed what we had to give. Other musicians started asking about their own impact. Started wondering who in their audiences they'd helped without knowing. Started looking at the front rows differently. The jacket became legendary in those circles. Not for what it was. For what it represented. Proof that art saves lives. That spectacle can be sacred. That the kid in the too small jacket had been right all along. Quiet guys can be heroes. Ace still doesn't do interviews about the jacket. Still doesn't explain. But every few years, someone asks the right question the right way, and he'll say this. I spent 50 years being told I was just the show. Just the rockets and the makeup. Like that was less than being the serious musician. But that kid didn't need serious. He needed spectacle. He needed Space Ace. He needed someone who looked different and made it cool. I gave him that. Not on purpose. Just by existing. By refusing to be normal. And when his brother handed me that jacket, I realized, being the show was the most important thing I ever did. The jacket sits in its case. The photograph beside it. 2 boys who loved each other. One who stayed. One who left too soon. And a rock star who learned that his legacy wasn't in the notes he played. It was in the armor he'd unknowingly provided to a child who needed to feel invincible. Ace Frehley never needed validation. Never needed critics to take him seriously. Never needed anyone to explain his worth. Because he had something better than respect. He had proof. Small. Leather. Hand-stitched. Proof that being different saves lives. That spectacle matters. That quiet guys with loud guitars can be exactly the hero someone needs. The story lives in whispers now. Passed between musicians. Shared in green rooms. A reminder that audiences aren't crowds. They're individuals. Each carrying something. Each needing something. And sometimes, if you're lucky, one of them walks up to the stage and hands you proof that what you did mattered. Ace keeps the jacket close. Not as a trophy. As a responsibility. A reminder that every show could be someone's armor. Every performance could be someone's medicine. Every night on stage could be the night a kid in a too small jacket decides that different is heroic. And that's legacy. Not awards. Not sales figures. Not critical acclaim. Legacy is a brother who traveled to a concert 3 years after a funeral to deliver a sacred object to the man who'd made his siblings' short life bearable. Legacy is standing frozen on stage because you suddenly understand the weight of what you've been carrying all along. Ace Frehley never asked to be a hero. Never claimed to be one. Just played his guitar. Wore his costume. Put on the show. And somewhere, somehow, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.